Greetings everyone. In this video presentation I will be covering the topic of pedophilia and holistic healing for both the perpetrators and those who have been victimized. And often those are one and the same, so many people who engage in pedophilia are actually people who were abused sexually as children. To really understand this issue, we need to look at the roots of it. As a psychotherapist and as a holistic therapist and spiritual energy healer, I often look at the energetic and subconscious roots of issues that people are dealing with or presenting. And by looking at those deep levels, we can find ways to actually address and resolve a particular problematic pattern. There's a very valuable textbook, you could refer to it as a reference book in the field of holistic psychology, called Problematic Patterns by Michael J. Lincoln, which I would recommend. Problematic Patterns addresses the behavioral, psychological, and psychiatric issues that people present with and looks at their emotional meaning. Dr. Lincoln refers to this book as the Mind's Desk Reference. And this book is an alphabetical listing with just about any particular condition or diagnosis or situation that you could conceive of, and it examines how that particular pattern develops, what are the causes or roots of it, which typically relates to a person's childhood upbringing, to their relationships with their parents, and phenomena of that nature. On the subject of pedophilia, Dr. Lincoln refers to 4 different major causal patterns or pathways that could be at the roots of a person exhibiting that type of behavior. Now, first we want to really define what a pedophile is, because not everyone who engages in sexual activity with a minor is necessarily someone who would be considered a pedophile. Not all of them are actually mainly attracted to minors. So in some cases a person might be tricked into having sex with someone who looks older than they actually are. There are other situations that might lead to that activity where that isn't really the actual orientation or preference that that person is inclined toward. So pedophilia is someone who has an attraction sexually to children, and it could be children of varying age ranges. So some may be attracted to early adolescents, some may be attracted to elementary school age children, some might be attracted to toddlers or babies. So any of that is possible. Looking at the 4 major causal pathways that Lincoln describes, we're going to examine how each of them may appear in people's lives, and we'll also consider how these issues could be treated. The first potential scenario is one that he refers to as peer play. These individuals, according to Lincoln, are compulsively engaged in non-aggressive, passive sexual involvement such as voyeurism and exhibitionism, with children. They are just too socially and sexually incompetent to face adult peer relations and sexuality. It is the result of extremely demoralizing and confidence, competence, and personal worth undermining, sexploitative and rejecting maternal parenting, resulting in a developmental flatline at middle childhood. In that scenario, the root cause seems to be related to the relationship with the mother. So the mother's treatment of that person as a child really caused them to get stuck at that middle childhood stage of development where they don't feel confident and secure in dealing with people socially and sexually on an adult level. And as a result of that, their sexuality has become attached to that childhood stage. The second scenario that Dr. Lincoln describes is what he refers to as playing doctor. In this scenario, the individuals are fixated at an early level of immature sexual development induced by a sexploitative and yet repressive, oppressive parenting. They were given a severe "don't grow up" injunction by a massively possessive mother. So here again we have the connection with the maternal role in child rearing. The third potential pattern that Lincoln describes is one that he calls the sad settle-fors. They suffer from severe, fearful sexual inhibition coupled with intensely exaggerated sexual interest generated by sexploitative and shame-inducing parenting in a highly dysfunctional and addiction-creating family. So here we have people who are fearful or inhibited in one sense towards sex, while at the same time there's this intensely exaggerated sexual interest that the parent or parents have promoted. And then the last scenario that Lincoln describes is the one that people may have the most connection to in their normal way of thinking about pedophiles. It's the one that's the most power abusing, the one that's the most aggressive. And he calls this the raging rapist. They are engaged in an enraged control and revenge trip in which they take advantage of their power position vis-a-vis a child to impose their will and revenge on them. Obviously, if they're seeking to impose revenge, it implies that they're doing to this child what some older person had done to them at some point. Here, this is a fulminatingly furious power rapist who's lording it over his vulnerable victims, and they use the word his here, but it could also be a female perpetrator. So these pedophiles aren't just of one gender, they're not just of one sexual orientation. It could be men, it could be women, it could be heterosexual, homosexual, bisexual. People of any of those tendencies could be drawn toward children for some particular reason, such as the ones that Lincoln describes. In this case of the raging rapist, he says that it's a rapist who's lording it over the victims in this vengeance and retaliation for being effectively derailed from their own destiny by paranoidally possessive, sexploitative, seductive, destructive, and development and destiny preventing maternal parenting, and that is often accompanied by an equally rageful and vicious authoritarian and paranoid patriarchal father. Now that we've looked at these potential issues of what could lead someone toward becoming a pedophile, we're going to look into how we could help heal or resolve these types of issues. So if we have a person who's been essentially caught in this state of arrested development where they were abused as a child, typically in some sexual way, so there's a sexual theme to the way that they were abused as a child, and they've developed this psychological fixation on sexual interactions with children. In some cases it's more passive, in others it's more aggressive, but in either case the person is drawn toward this type of sexual interaction or stimulation involving children. We're going to look now at a healer's website online where this person discusses how they would approach addressing the challenges of working to heal those types of sexual impulses. Here it says at this end of the spectrum, and by the end of the spectrum they're referring to a pedophile, we have those who are truly hetero, homo, or bi, but are attracted to and act out with the underage because a previous trauma has them stuck in an underage stage of development. You can get a hint of where they may be stuck at by what ages they are most attracted to. With this type of offender, visiting, that means reviewing in their mind and collapsing the core past traumas that have them stuck is enough to prevent them from reoffending. It seems so simplistic, and yet it has been completely successful in cases at this end of the spectrum, since the acting out is merely a triggered aspect of the individual and not an integral part of their sexual makeup. So these are people who have the potential to be normally attracted to adults and have those types of relationships with adults, but part of their psyche is stuck or fixated upon those unresolved childhood experiences, which leads them to have those types of attractions. In this person's experience, the keys to successfully releasing pedophilia, as it's been defined there, is energy psychology and energy medicine. This healer has found that the process and professional application of EFT, emotional freedom technique, and theta healing work great to find and collapse the core traumas that are behind the attraction. Those are healing methods that combine working with energy and with the subconscious mind and subconscious beliefs to release things that have some type of charged belief and emotions so that the person can essentially reset their programming. As each trauma is released, the emotional connection to and desire for underage people dissolves until only healthy interactions remain. As with any other issue, it's advisable to be watchful for and aware of any new aspect that hasn't been collapsed, that means resolved or neutralized. These unresolved parts may create enough of a drive or desire to become a problem, and therefore should be handled through the same methods as quickly as possible. Now, in my experience, there are multiple forms of energy healing and subconscious healing work that can assist with these processes. So just doing direct somatic or energetic laying on of hands type healing can also help clear some of those energies and help open up and release the energetic charge as well as the memories and emotions from past traumas. One very interesting and in a sense inspiring thing is that you can use these methods both for the people who are the offenders and for those who are the ones who are considered to be the victims. Thus, it's something where both sides of the coin, both the people who have been traumatized and the ones who are perpetrating the trauma, actually have their pattern originating from past traumas. This healer says that somewhere in between fall people who are not at one end of the spectrum, not at the other end, but they're at what could be referred to as the pedosexual end. And it would be more appropriate to treat them as if they are pedosexual in nature. By default, it is advisable that anyone who places at a point 3/4 or less from the pedosexual side should be treated and supported as if they are full pedosexual until proven otherwise. Now, what does this person mean by pedosexual? Well, that would be a person whose core attraction, kind of at the root of their being or essence, is the desire for sex with children. In working with all sex offenses against a child, it's important to also work through the energy around the individual offenses with the perpetrator, starting first with the ones that have the strongest pull or are easiest to recall. Offenders of child-related sex crimes usually have a feeling of remorse or guilt for the act, except in perhaps the most extreme cases. By working through the energy related to the offenses, including the pre-crime preparatory stage, we can get to the core cause easier and further collapse the drive toward committing those crimes against children. It's important to realize that people who engage in these behaviors often feel guilt and shame about what they're doing, even though they continue to feel compelled to do it. And you see this with other types of addictive behaviors or compulsive behaviors. People are unconsciously being driven to engage in actions that they know they're going to feel bad about it afterwards, but they're just stuck in that compulsive behavior. So that energy of shame and guilt surrounding what they're doing actually adds to that pattern. It kind of keeps them even further stuck in that dynamic, in that pattern. Therefore, we want to help them release that shame and guilt to essentially have some form of self-forgiveness, self-acceptance, to not be carrying this self-judgment, this self-devaluation any further, but to actually be okay with themselves so that they can then be able to work on healing the aspect that's the trigger for that type of compulsive behavior. Referring here to the pre-crime preparatory stage, it's said that all premeditated crimes have a preparatory stage in which the perpetrator plans out as much of the details of the act as possible. With sex crimes against children, that could include how they find the victim, how they groom them, the location where they carry out the activity, any items that are involved, deciding on the timing of it, and any cover-up or cleanup that they do afterwards. So this particular article is from Reverend Christopher Standing Bear. And Standing Bear is a trauma release coach. That's a trademark title he uses for the type of healing work that he's doing. A healing work that's in some ways based on intuition, on spiritual guidance, in combination with conventional psychology and different energy healing and energy psychology methods. So this holistic type of approach is one that can be effective in helping release and resolve these types of patterns by healing the traumas, by healing the beliefs and emotions that have become embedded in that person, in their energy, in their cellular memory. Those really need to be released so the person is free of those subconscious influences. It's like you're letting go of old programming and setting yourself free so then you can create a different identity, a different consciousness within yourself. When we have the baggage of those past memories and the emotions and beliefs that are attached to them, those are subconsciously driving our behaviors. It's not just in the context of sexual behaviors, but really all of our behaviors are greatly influenced or determined by subconscious patterns and programs. And if you want to get good results with healing any of these issues, you do need to address those levels. In the mainstream of society, people often look at these sexual behaviors from a moralistic filter or viewpoint. So they're looking at people who abuse children as somehow evil, and they want to punish them. They want to isolate them from society and think that's the end of it, that really resolves the situation. But ultimately that doesn't resolve anything. It's just leaving that person stuck in that state of consciousness that they've been in. Just as we want to help the person who has been traumatized release the past and not have that be guiding their future relationships and behaviors, we need to address things in that manner with offenders, with people who are carrying out those abusive behaviors, so that they're released from continuing to interact with people in dysfunctional ways. I hope that this discussion has given you some ideas and insights. I know that many people in our society are learning a lot about how pervasive pedophilia and child sexual abuse and exploitation and human trafficking, how those phenomena have really taken a toll on our civilization, of how many prominent people and institutions in our society are plagued by that type of dynamic. Even how pedophilia is used to entrap and blackmail people in positions of wealth and power. And with it going on at that level of society, you could call it the elite class, the ruling class, the pillars of the community, so to speak, then we can see that it's something that isn't isolated to people in poor communities or people who are in the prison system. It's actually everywhere. And we don't want to be in a state of denial about it. We don't want to sweep it under the rug and keep it secret. When things are kept secret and hidden, they're not healed. They just continue to fester and build. So the first step is to really acknowledge things, to face and confront them, and then to release some of those polarized reactions rather than seeking to find vengeance against people. We can seek to help them rehabilitate and heal themselves, just as we want the people who have been abused or traumatized to heal. So addressing things only from a criminal justice system level, only from a moralistic religious level, is not really promoting healing. It may actually, in lots of cases, add to the guilt and shame and the sense of being rejected or mistreated that many of those people are carrying. If you're interested in learning more about this subject, I do encourage you to explore those types of holistic healing modalities that address the subconscious mind, the spiritual level, the energetic level, the somatic level. We don't want to leave out any of those aspects of our being, since they're all in some way related to or involved with how we are acting and reacting to things in our lives. From my point of view, the core of these issues is ultimately spiritual. It's the deepest beliefs and feelings that we have about ourselves and about our relationship with other people, with life, and with what would be called God or the creator of all existence. When we have some type of abuse occur to us involving our parents, in a way it's a form of archetypal dysfunction in our relationship with God. So as a child, your parents archetypally are playing the role of God in your life. Since you haven't developed a theology at that point, you're just looking up to your parents as all-powerful and all-knowing. You have to trust them, and unfortunately, they're betraying that trust. They're mistreating you. And as a form of self-preservation, people have to use some type of mechanism to cope with that. One mechanism could be to dissociate, to block out the memory, to disconnect from their body. Another method could be to attempt to normalize what's occurring and even perhaps to identify with the abuser. So to tell yourself that it's okay to act that way and to decide at some point to take on that role and that pattern of behavior oneself. So that's another reaction that some people may exhibit. This is why we see that with people who are traumatized sexually, some of them go to the extreme of avoiding sex, of completely separating themselves from sexual interaction with people. So they've developed essentially a phobia about sexual contact, whereas others become very promiscuous. They actually seek it out and they attempt to reenact the sexual abuse that occurred, that was done to them. So those are a couple different extremes of how people have created a coping or defense mechanism to deal with what happened to them. In our healing work, we want to help people release that original trauma so they don't have to carry out some type of extreme reaction, so they're not caught up in any form of overcompensation or overreaction when they interact with people and deal with present relationships in their lives. For those that are interested in learning more about holistic health, spiritual healing, and metaphysics, I invite you to visit my website, which is www.phinsights.com. You can also find me on Facebook, facebook.com/Jedi Holistic Healing. For now, I would like to wish everyone a wonderful day. This is Jed Schlackman, a mental health counselor and spiritual energy healer working in Miami, Florida, and working with people actually from all over the world, not just in person, but also via remote or distance healing. I would like to thank you for taking this time to seek insight and understanding about this subject. Pedophilia and ways of addressing it is something that a lot of people are not that comfortable talking about, but as a society, this is something that we really would benefit from addressing so that we can end the cycle of abuse and allow all of us to live in a healthier society.